Let's get right into it.
Number 6.
The monster study. Picture this. You're 6 years old, learning how to talk, and instead of your teacher cheering you on, they lean in and go, "Wow, that was terrible. Don't stutter like that again." Yeah, that's basically what the University of Iowa did in 1939. Researchers took a group of orphans, yes, literal parentless kids who already had enough trauma on their plate, and split them into 2 groups. One group got positive reinforcement for speaking well, and the other, the negative group, got emotionally roasted every time they opened their mouths. The results were as dark as you'd expect. Kids who were perfectly fine speakers started stuttering, developed deep anxiety, and basically got scarred for life. Imagine being verbally bullied by science. And the worst part? The researchers tried to keep it a secret for decades. They literally called it the monster study, which is both honest branding and a red flag that maybe you shouldn't do it in the first place. The long-term impact? Some of those kids carried speech problems and trauma well into adulthood. So yeah, if anyone ever tells you, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me," show them the monster study. Words can absolutely crush a child's self-esteem, and apparently, science was willing to prove it. The hard way.
Number 5. Project MK Ultra. You knew this one was coming. Because nothing screams totally safe and ethical like the CIA secretly spiking people with LSD to see if they could break their minds open like piñatas. In the 1950s and 60s, the US government decided, hey, what if mind control is real, and launched MK Ultra. And when I say launched, I mean they went full mad scientist. We're talking drugging soldiers, prisoners, random civilians, sometimes without their consent, sometimes without them even knowing. Imagine going out for a drink and suddenly you're tripping harder than a teenager at Woodstock. That actually happened to some people. The CIA wanted to know if LSD could be weaponized. Maybe turn enemies into babbling wrecks or create Manchurian Candidate-style assassins. Spoiler, it didn't work. But it left behind a trail of shattered lives, nervous breakdowns, and a generation of people who suddenly had a very good reason not to trust their government. And the kicker? Most of the records were destroyed in the 1970s when someone realized, if people find out about this, we're toast. But enough evidence survived to confirm that, yeah, your tax dollars once funded the world's sketchiest rave. Basically, MK Ultra was science's way of saying, what if we put ethics in a blender and then took acid about it?
Number 4. The Stanford prison experiment. If you've ever given someone a tiny bit of power and immediately regretted it, this one's for you. In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo decided to test how ordinary people act in a prison setting. He recruited college students, randomly assigned them to be guards or prisoners, and turned the Stanford basement into a fake jail. Easy enough, right? Except things spiraled out of control faster than a reality TV show. Within hours, the guards started inventing humiliating punishments, forcing prisoners to do push-ups, stripping them, depriving them of sleep. The prisoners broke down emotionally, crying, rebelling, or becoming disturbingly submissive. And Zimbardo? Instead of pulling the plug, he basically sat back like it was the best Netflix binge of his career. The experiment was supposed to last 2 weeks. It ended after just 6 days because it was getting way too real. People left traumatized, reputations got shredded, and the whole thing became Exhibit A in the "don't let psych majors play God" debate. The Stanford prison experiment is still taught today, partly as a lesson in power dynamics, but mostly as a cautionary tale of how quickly humans can turn into villains when you hand them a uniform and zero accountability. Basically, give someone sunglasses and a whistle and watch them morph into Darth Vader light.
Number 3. The Rosenhan experiment. Imagine walking into a hospital and saying, "Hey, I hear some voices." Not specific ones, just a vague thud or hollow sound. That's all it took in the 1970s for psychiatrist David Rosenhan and 7 other pseudo-patients to get themselves admitted into psychiatric hospitals. Here's the kicker. Once inside, they acted completely normal. No voices, no weird behavior, nothing, just everyday people. And yet, doctors and staff treated them like they were deeply disturbed. Everything they did was seen as a symptom. Writing notes? Must be obsessive. Being quiet? Oh, clearly withdrawn. The experiment revealed how once you slap a psychiatric label on someone, the system interprets everything through that lens. Some of the fake patients were kept locked up for weeks. The staff barely interacted with them beyond clinical commands. In fact, the only people who figured out they were faking were, wait for it, the real patients, which is both hilarious and horrifying. Imagine being institutionalized and the guy next to you leans over like, "You don't belong here, do you?" And he's right. The Rosenhan experiment exposed how fragile psychiatric diagnoses could be and how dehumanizing mental institutions were at the time. Basically, it proved that if you're stuck in the system, good luck convincing anyone you're sane. The label speaks louder than your actual behavior.
Number 2. The learned helplessness dogs. This one's as cruel as it is creepy. Back in the 1960s, psychologists Martin Seligman and Stephen Meyer ran an experiment on dogs to study behavior under stress. They put the dogs in cages with electrified floors. Some dogs could press a lever to stop the shocks. Others, no escape, no control, just zap. City. Over time, the unlucky dogs stopped even trying to avoid the shocks. Even when the researchers later gave them an escape route, the dogs didn't bother. They just lay down and took the pain. They learned that nothing they did mattered, so why try? That mindset became known as learned helplessness. And here's the creepy part. Humans do the same thing. When people feel trapped in situations, toxic jobs, bad relationships, endless failure loops, they can stop trying to change things, even if a way out appears. It's like your brain hands in its resignation letter. So yeah, thanks to some electrified puppies, we learned a lot about depression, motivation, and hopelessness, but at the cost of traumatizing man's best friend. Imagine trying to explain that to your dog. Sorry, buddy, it was for science.
Number 1.
The David Reimer case. If you ever needed proof that science can sometimes veer into full-blown horror movie territory, meet David Reimer. Born in 1965 as Bruce, he had a botched circumcision that destroyed his, well, you know. Doctors suggested a radical fix: raise him as a girl. Enter psychologist John Money, who was obsessed with proving that gender identity was purely a social construct. So, Bruce became Brenda. He was dressed in girl clothes, given dolls, and told he'd thrive if everyone just pretended hard enough. Spoiler, it didn't work. Brenda never felt right, resisted the role, and grew up depressed and isolated. Meanwhile, John Money doubled down, even forcing deeply inappropriate therapy sessions to try to reinforce his fury. It wasn't just unethical, it was abusive. Eventually, Brenda's parents told her the truth, and she transitioned back to living as David. But the psychological damage was permanent. David struggled for years and tragically died by suicide in 2004. Basically, the creepiest experiment ever done on the human mind didn't just mess with psychology, it hijacked someone's entire identity. And the result was heartbreak.
That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.